we go. Okay. Thank you for being here. The Future Studies channel is a community of practice space for people to share ideas. And this year we are running a series on imagination and how imagination shape or influence on why it is important to our future's work. So today we are very lucky to have two very, two futurists who are very renowned for their own part of the work, I think, in their space that they hold. So we have Stephen Lichty from Nairobi and Elena Domenicucci. How do I pronounce your name? Elena.
It's Domenicucci.
Oh, Domenicucci. She's based in Lisbon. I've made that mistake earlier, but anyway. So so great to have you here. So the session, I would like the speaker to briefly introduce themselves, introduce their work, and after that we'll open the floor for questions and answers, or just share your ideas. So I would like to just have a questions to direct the discussion for today. So what we're doing today will be asking the question, what does imagination mean to both of you? And also open to the floor if you want to write your notes on our chat or text message. What does imagination mean to you, and why it is important for your work that's related to futures? Okay, so I will hand it over to Stephen. Stephen, go ahead. You go. Or who would like to go first? Would you like Elena to go first?
I would like Elena to go first.
Okay.
She sounds like the artist here.
Yeah, I'm the artist, but like the artisty one, but I'm a big time introvert, so but okay, I'm pushed to doing this, so it's good. Hello everyone, thanks Noor for the invitation. I've been really honored to be called to speak in this space. And thanks all of you for being here and joining our dialogue. I'm a cultural producer and curator based in Lisbon, and my work sits at the intersection of cultural production, future research, and imagination practices. I wouldn't define myself a futurist, even though I touch in different spaces future-related work. I collaborate with organizations and festivals and grassroots initiatives to support the emergence of new ways of seeing and acting. And what I would like to share with you today are a few insights and thoughts that are all the time evolving from my practice that I hope that might resonate with the space. I believe that culture is a vital site for imagination, and I feel that many times within the future studies, culture is not considered much. Something that guides me in my work is thinking of culture as a technology of bond and meaning, because it is where the production of shared meaning happens. And today, more than ever, we need shared meaning, as especially with AI, we are risking to, and with a lot of other phenomena that we experience, we are losing a bit of shared meaning. What happens when we consider culture not just as a backdrop, as a scenario, but as an active generative force, one that shapes how we imagine and how we create futures together. So in my practice, through this lens, culture is considered as world building in action. And cultural practices, whether we are talking about art, storytelling, rituals, in themselves encapsulate possibilities. as they allow us to experiment with the new ways of sensing, relating, and ultimately being. So when imagination isn't just an abstract individual device, and it is experienced as an embodied and spatial collective practices, it opens space for different considerations. And for me, and this is a bit like the conclusion of what I wanted to share with you, this brings us to the importance of third places, autonomous spaces, and all the big and multidimensional possibilities that are in all the cultural organizations at very different levels, from grassroots to more institutional cultural spaces that are in themselves laboratories for imagination, where we pave the way for new ideas, processes, and relationships to emerge. And we are now in a time where everyone is trying to reshape what we do at the organizational and personal level, because there is a big need for that. Yeah, it's interesting for me to consider cultural projects, festivals from smaller to bigger scale as zones where connections and meanings are made visible, and so as sort of small scale experiment and case studies in themselves. I'm really curious to know how this will resonate with the group, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hear your comments and questions. And first, Stephen.
Yeah, ditto with what Elena said there. I have a very broad understanding of imagination. What I'm going to be sharing is going to be talking about some of the more practical side that communities that I'm working with in Kenya, how they're using imagination, but I can also go very theoretical and conceptual, and looking at imagination as forms of justice, and a form of cognitive rewiring of the brain. So I'll be trying to ground it in some really fun sort of artwork, but then we'll be talking about some rather theoretical sort of stuff. But I think there's something powerful about the neurobiology of imagination, and what certain regimes around the world, what colonialism has done for imagination. So I'm going to be looking at kind of what does imagination look like when it's locked and when it's unlocked. So yeah, very broad definition of what I'm bringing to the table. So hopefully it'll fit someone's interest in the group. So back to you, SeeSee.
Yeah, I mean, you have, Stephen, you have a presentation. Would you like to take over?
Yeah, well, let me dive into this. And Elena, I'm looking forward to seeing how you want to critique this and what you might, add to this. So we're going to jump back and forth between probably some artwork. So
I mean, I like that you started off with, talking about how imagination as a form of justice, and you're saying how imagination would influence, and change the form of our brain as well, how our thinking process, right? So
yeah, so I'm going to work through just some slides. There's some narrative, but then there's some art. And so let me just begin with, thanking Basil Kincaid. He is the artist for these pieces. These are quilts. So this is not painting. This is fabric that he has sewn together from various pieces of fabric. Okay, the only thing I have...
The presentation, you have to start from beginning.
The
beginning of
are you... Are you seeing the beginning there? I have it on the beginning.
No, we don't have it. I don't know. I don't have it here.
Okay, let me
Start again.
start again.
I was seeing slide 10, but just
Yeah.
in
Okay.
yeah,
Are you
not,
seeing the cover slide now?
no,
Not-
we are not seeing anything. But maybe it needs.
No, I need to just get it back to, I started it from another place in the slide deck. So let me go to this one.
So, Seppo Mukadi has a question, I think, for Elena while we wait for technical issues. So he says multi-dimensional possibilities emerge when culture is embraced in collectives. Is culture evolving or revolving?
Well, I can definitely come back to that. Both of my screens now are occupied with the slide. Can you see it from the beginning now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
I would leave the floor to Stephen first,
Okay.
and yeah, then I will answer these questions if you're okay with this.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because I right now I'm not seeing any questions because it takes over the screen here. So this is entitled Imagination Unlocked, and I'm using the work of Basil Kincaid. He is a Ghanaian American, so I think born in the US, but comes from Ghana. His family comes from Ghana. He's an artist based in St. Louis in the United States, and these are quilts. This is all fabric that he has sewn together and pieced together. This I think I have a slide with the full picture, but these are often 4 or 5 meters in length and 4 or 5 meters high. They're massive pieces that he's working with. The only thing I've altered in this image is I've inserted a key that this individual is holding in the middle of the image. So this is part of me trying to unlock it. And Basil has given me permission to use his work here. So another piece of his, this is Imagination Locked. This is kind of the neurocognitive realities. So a lot of the populations that I work with are coming from poverty. They're coming from gang violence. They're former terrorist organizations, people that have managed to get out of Al-Shabaab in Somalia. And so these groups have experienced multiple forms of trauma, whether it's historical, whether it's intergenerational, whether it's structural trauma arising from poverty and so forth. And we know that there's a neurobiological effect when people are coming from these sort of spaces. And it leads to this collective freeze response, where when we think about futures thinking, we often say, oh, we think 10 years out is kind of where we start. For many of these groups, it's 1 day, it's 1 week, it's maybe 1 month. When I've asked youth about their 10-year plans, they say, I don't think I'll be alive in 10 years. So very different sort of understandings of time and so forth. And these are some of the effects of trauma. And I'll be bringing the intersection of how it relates to imagination. So what colonialism did is it did more than suppress political structures. It imposed knowledge hierarchies, it invalidated indigenous sort of systems, and the entire creative, imaginative, cultural, artistic forms, a lot of that was suppressed. So it undermined the creative capacity. It created this imaginative dependence. So one of the things I like to tell people in Kenya, and they all laugh, they all agree, it's like Kenya is a cut and paste culture. These co-work spaces, 10 years ago, the whole idea of co-working space kind of popped up. And now there seems to be some 10-story building that's a co-work space on every block in Nairobi. And so it's just cutting and pasting a model of what they look like. And then interior wise, the interior design is also cut and paste from other sort of places. But it also creates the status quo where psychological constriction maintains these inherited dysfunctional political and economic systems. So even though Kenya is an independent nation in 1963, there are still these forms of neocolonialism as it relates to cognitive and creative sort of spaces. So there's an unlocking of the imagination. And another one of Kincaid's pieces here. So this is not the focus of my presentation, but I'm going to give you just a brief interlude because this is the connecting piece. So I work in the mental health space. We're working with community-initiated care that is working to heal this trauma. This is the World Health Organization's mental health pyramid. When we think of mental health, we often think of the psychological, psychiatric, that's the top part of the pyramid. But this is the cost here are incredibly high and the need is relatively low versus the community care, self-care that needs to happen at the bottom of the pyramid. So I'm working in these spaces where we're doing this connecting and healing and bringing hope using personal, social, cognitive, and communal sort of elements to bring it. This is a whole nother sort of presentation. I'm just saying this is the intervening 12-week sort of program that is very hands-on, that is helping people move from futures unconsciousness to a state of futures consciousness, and then the imagination flows from that. So this is the imaginative justice unleashed. And what are the implications for Africa's future? So we talk about cognitive justice, and I think a lot of people are familiar with this, but I'm playing with this idea of imaginative justice, which goes one step further, which states that everyone deserves the conditions to imagine and try alternatives. So you can kind of read some of the lingo there, but there was a study conducted at Yale University with Yale University students, I believe in the economics department. These are not poor kids. These are not kids that have suffered from want, but they started doing experiments by putting them into the scenarios that people that I would maybe be working with here in Nairobi. And lo and behold, these economic students at Yale University start practicing the same habits of thought and how to spend money and how to engage with risk, how to engage with creativity and imagination. In a very simple game, we can duplicate the realities of, informal slums and so forth here in Kenya. So it just shows you that when you put these constraints of poverty, of police violence, of punishing curiosity, all of these sort of things, we can recreate that at Yale University and show that the effects of this are actually relatively quick. So that's maybe more the academic side of this, but I think it shows the power that imagination can be locked in some of these sort of spaces. So when healing sticks, which is what I was kind of showing you in these 12-week sort of programs, seeing the trauma healing take place, this is when the imagination moves from the canvas to the systems. So in our work in these communities, we're doing a lot of third-person sharing, but also painting, drumming, dramas, interpretive dance, all these sort of things that are on what do we call that in art, the visual arts and performative arts. But what is happening with these youth is they are now using that to transform their local systems. So we can say three sort of levels here, from the micro, meso, and the macro. So these youth are finding new livelihoods because their risk tolerance and planning kind of returns from a cognitive sort of perspective. They're re-engaging with their training. Their parents and teachers are asking us what happened to these kids because all of a sudden they're more mindful, they're more engaged. So we're seeing it at a micro level. Then we're seeing it at a meso level, where the youth are starting childcare collectives. They're working with sports clubs. They're working with their local restoration projects. They're co-designing for safer public spaces. The county I was working in asked the youth to come and lead the same program within the prison system in the county. So the youth are unlocking this. And then at a macro level, they're engaged in scenario labs. They're engaged in county planning. They're engaged in a wider sort of system, even beyond their community. Kenya is highly involved in participation, but participation is only going to be as good as the minds, driving the participation and what is unlocked in those sort of minds. So there's a little bit on, again, when healing sticks, imagination moves from canvas, which is where often we think of imagination. I'm wanting to see it move into the systems and into that imaginative justice that wants to see the micro, meso, and macro reframed So this feeds into something even bigger that I'm researching and playing with. And this is what I call the African about face. So we talk about prescriptive weird development trajectories. I think many of you are familiar with weird. This is Western, educated, industrialized, rich.
Did we lose Stephen? Stephen, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Stephen, let me text him. So, in any case, if you have any questions so far, please write it on the chat box. Oh my God, he doesn't know his lost with. Okay, he's being disconnected. Well, in any case, so we have, while we wait for Stephen to come back, Elena, would you like to answer to Shippo Mokadi's question? He says, multidimensional possibilities emerge when culture is embraced in collectives. Is culture evolving or revolving?
I would say that culture is constantly doing both. And it very much depends also what definition we give to culture. If we think about cultural practices and let's say like cultural programmings, or if we think of culture in a more anthropological sense, so also considering the symbols, the language, the rituals, the way of staying together and being together. And I think that also even thinking about culture in terms of programming, cultural programming, and cultural production, it very much depends on where we look at. So I would say that at a more institutional level, culture is revolving. And at the more grassroots or autonomous level, culture is evolving, but that lower part is marginalized and is perceived with a lot of prejudice, and so that evolution never goes up into more like dominant or shared discourse.
Mm, mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of times, in a institutional or corporate foresight discussion, we normally look at, okay, yeah, societal change, but we don't put cultural aspects into main discussion. A lot of times, I think it's good that you brought this up. Shepo, do you like to take the microphone and ask the question? Or anybody else have question? Shepo, would you like to come on and ask the question?
Maybe it's not.
Hi, Anisah. No, I am good. Actually, Elena actually elaborated and explained exactly because I was having a difficulty in understanding the difference if culture is it evolving or revolving. I understand the difference. Now she put it in such a way that at least now I'm able to ascertain. I put it into my own perspective how I see culture manifesting itself where I am based. How that's why I say I'm satisfied with the answer that Elena provided. Thank
But
you.
I would also like to, or I think we all would like to also have your perspective if you want to share with us what brought you to ask this question.
Okay. We presently where I am based, there is a lot of I don't say it's xenophobic attacks, but it's a lot of attacks that are happening within people, whereby we are seeing certain people being deported to their uh, countries of their origins. Now, for me, that it's not. If you understand Ubuntu, then I don't see the need to deport people like the way we are deporting them currently. What is happening? The reason I'm asking the question was in relation to that. Now, my perspective is that if we were to apply that principle of Ubuntu, then I believe this thing that is happening now currently of deporting these illegal migrants that are in our country, South Africa now, I think there's another approach that can be used, not this one of deporting people, because there is a reason why they are here. So that's what my thinking or my thought process regarding that cultural aspect. However, you kind of put me in a nice understanding, or you kind of provided a satisfactory answer with explaining the two words. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Stephen is back. Stephen, would you like to start sharing? Mm,
You are mute.
Stephen, you're mute. It's okay.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Did you see
We can hear you.
did you get through some of the slideshow, or what happened?
You stop at that weird slide. The
Oh, I
WEIR.
stopped at the
Yes.
weird. Okay.
Yes. Well, that's
Let
where we
me
lost.
that's where we lost you. Okay, so there's like 2 more slides after that. So let me find that one. And what are you seeing now? Are you seeing anything now? You're on mute, SeeSee.
I'm not seeing anything yet. Did you share screen, Elena? Are you seeing? No.
Do you see
Ah,
it now?
Okay. Yes, you have to play. You have to play it
Okay.
from current
Let
slide.
me from current slide. Okay. So I think you saw this slide. This was my call for an American or an African about face.
Wait, it's gone again. The slide is gone.
Is it there now?
No.
Do you see it now?
No.
Do you see it now?
It's coming. Yes.
Okay. I am not going to try. I'm going to leave it on this presentation because it seems to be disappearing when I do full screen. So you saw this one. There's just two more slides here. These are just some quotes that I think are really powerful. I'll just let you read them so Wangari Maathai was a famous environmentalist here in Kenya, and Adrienne Maree Brown. Many of you maybe have read her book, Emergent Strategy. These are, to me, the Africans that are emulating and calling for this African about face. And I think if anyone wants the slides as well, I can share those, so you can shoot me a message there. And then from a political perspective, let me just share Stephen Biko, the prominent activist in South Africa that was killed in, I believe, 1975. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And then Thomas Sankara, the independence leader in Burkina Faso. I love his quote here: "The courage to invent the future, and we must dare to invent the future." This is again part of this call with imagination and so forth. And there, just this last slide, there's Basil Kincaid with one of his art pieces, and you can just see the size of it. This is like half the size of some of the work that I've seen. So just thanking him. You can have a look at basilkincaid.art if you want to see more of his work. So, well, glad I got caught up. We didn't lose too much, but the last few slides. So I'm going to stop sharing there.
Great, thank you so much. And Elena, would you like to have anything you want to share? Or we'll open the floor for questions.
I would open the floor for question because it's already, we're already halfway through the hour. So I think that it would be interesting to share perspectives.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe just a summary from your all, an answer, a quick response on the comments about, so what does imagination mean to you and why is it important for your work? So a quick roundup overview of what you think.
I think that like imagination is the only salvation that we have. And so that, it's really urgent to unlock it. The way I work with imagination is very much related to somatic work as well, because I think that to do this passage of also what Stephen was mentioning, from locked imagination to unlocked imagination, the working with the body is a quick way in, let's say. Arts as well is another way that can convey the unlocking of imagination. For me, imagination means like freedom and justice, but it also means hope and possibility.
So when I work with students, I always often hear this: "Oh, I'm not creative, therefore I cannot imagine." Yeah. So Stephen, what's your take about that?
Well, like the somatic work. So we do so much with somatic work, and if anyone here is familiar with tapping, we'll see people like they'll do this, and this is a sign to engage the prefrontal cortex. Like think from here, but by tapping it, touching it, feeling it, I don't think we fully understand what's happening. But they do a tapping at the back of the neck. And so at the back of the neck is the limbic system. This is your survival mechanism. And this is like, you're acknowledging this and you're saying, I'm safe. You're surviving. And so by tapping it and saying, acknowledging your safety, this is when you can begin from a neurobiological perspective, begin unleashing this. So they go hand in hand. And Anisah, I would know we've had these conversations about, Taiwanese students and saying, oh, I'm not creative and so forth. I think that's part of, each country has its own sort of lineage as to what you can and cannot do, and who has a voice, and what mediums can you use, and so forth. And so to me, we have to, because it's beyond the art, it's reimagining and recreating the social, the economic, the political systems that are there. And so that might not be represented by, say, Basil's, artwork, but that imagination needs to be applied in the day-to-day systems that we have. And I think that's where we stretch the idea that imagination is not something that's colorful on paper or print. It's much bigger than that. And it's connected actually to our feelings and our emotions and, our somatic, sort of systems, that I think as scientists, we're just beginning to realize that, we can laugh at forest bathing, but we don't actually know that because Elena was talking about being near this river and so forth. There's a phenomenon. We all know it when we go to the beach. We all know it when we're sitting in the sand, looking at that water. Something comes over us that washes something away, and in that space is where I think we can find the creativity to rethink what we want to do. So that's my inarticulate response.
So great, thank you. And there's a question by Sam Wilcox. Sam, I know you're putting your baby to sleep. I'll read your question for you. So her question is directed to Elena. Can you give an example of somatic unlocking of the body for or with imagination? I'd like to hear more about how you ended up working with these communities in Kenya, Stephen. Both of you, sorry. So two parts of the question. Number one, yeah, Elena first, and then Stephen.
Yeah, I will first answer to another question from Sam as well that was a bit, that was before this one in the chat. And yeah, it is, what do you think supports the positive evolution of culture at the grassroots level? So I think that the fact that at grassroots level there is a built-in autonomy and trust, and by saying autonomy I mean the freedom of experimenting, and by saying trust I mean like reciprocity, relationality as something that in these spaces is granted, are something that definitely supports the evolution of culture. And then as visibility and connection, in the sense that these spaces are created and people join into these movements to find shared meaning, and as I was saying initially, and to imagine as well, even if their imagination is not explicitly mentioned, is part of the mechanism, is part of why these movements or spaces exist. Yeah, so I hope that I answered to the first part of your question, Sam. And regarding the somatic unlocking, yeah, one of the example is the one that Stephen was talking about, the tapping, the breathing is another one. I love to work with breathing because yeah, it's really simple and is one of those techniques, methodologies that you can really, that individually can be adapted to how everyone is feeling, and is not too pushy in the sense that it's not one of those things that maybe someone might feel too uncomfortable to do, as yeah, breathing is what keeps us alive. And yeah, working with breathing is really, it opens a lot of possibilities. Another one is movement. Even just like light movement is always, yeah, from like light movement to really expressive dance, from all these spectrums is interesting way of unlocking the work on imagination. Yeah.
Sam, would you like to, or do you have the space to take the microphone and talk, or no? No? I see your hands up. No, if not, then maybe Stephen, can you see her question? Sam would like to hear more about how you ended up working with these communities in Kenya.
Yeah, again, I was working on my MPhil in future studies at Stellenbosch University, and at the same time was working with a friend of mine that was working in these communities. And so when I shared with her, some future studies sort of thing, she's like, I'd love to see you come hang out in this sort of space. So it was very much a impromptu. Was already engaged with peace building and conflict studies. I was intrigued with that. I was intrigued with the trauma healing, and it was only in this space that I saw that I saw that connection. And I've been working in international development probably for 25 years. And this 12-week program is, if we had video recordings, again, if we would do the more creative side of understanding change with people, what you would have first seen with these groups of 12 young 18, 19, 20-year-old women and young women, young men, head down. That's how they would talk to you, head down, and they would whisper. They would just whisper to you because there was no empowerment in it. And after 12 weeks, so if I had had a video camera and had seen each weekly interaction, I would have slowly seen the head come up, and I would have seen a projection of the voice and the engagement. So like if you would put that in this like 1 minute time lapse, I think it would be spectacular to actually, because our own personal transformation often takes a long time. Like we have an anger issue, or we're always sad, but something intervenes and we slowly get our mindset shifted. This is a 12-week intervention to do that trauma healing from a communal level, from multiple sort of levels, showing them that they are not their trauma. Most people think that they're their trauma, that I deserve this, that whatever happened to me, I've deserved this. And part of our training is that's not you. This is your brain. This is your limbic system keeping you alive. And the limbic system, to keep you alive, has to shut down. It's just how the body works. Just think of that wounded animal, a stray kitty or whatever that you see on the street that is scared of everyone because people have kicked it and beaten it and everything. So as human beings, we're not that much different. But when you adopt that cat, you adopt that dog into your home, it is scared, it bites you, it scratches you and so forth. But months later, it is purring in your lap. And so maybe that's not a fair comparison, but and I don't know if that, but I guess I got involved in this because it was like I was seeing the intersection of foresight and futures work with people having actually transformed sort of lives. And then the imagination theme is what was running. Art therapy is a very common form of working with trauma and so forth. You don't ask people to tell their story, but you ask them to paint it or to dance it or so forth. So to me, the intersection is, in that sort of space. So hopefully that answered your question.
We have a few questions by Elias. Before that, Stephen, very quickly, how do you get your participants to do this? Do you actually do this? Get them to tap the head or what?
Some of them, some of that's part of the training. The other one that I think everyone here, hopefully you know about this, but there's just the massaging that you can do on both sides of your ear. So this is tapping into your lymphatic, your lymph nodes and so forth. And most of us carry, if I would feel the shoulders of everyone in this virtual room, we all probably have really tight shoulders and so forth. This is all connected to the stress that we carry, that is the stress that can't drain. The stress cortisol, the stress hormone, gets caught in these lymphatic systems. And so this is why, if you've ever had an Indian head massage, where they're just massaging your neck and your head, we just don't even understand the power of that sort of movement. And this somatic sort of experience is powerful. So it's learning to just do this with a lot of them. But we've actually seen groups, older women actually in rural communities, they're doing this themselves. After they've received the training, they figured out tapping themselves. We didn't teach them tapping. They just realized, oh yeah, I remember this part of my brain is doing this. Acknowledge it and then move your thought process to the tapping in the front of your head.
Cool. Okay, so Elias, would you like to take the microphone and ask the questions, or do you want me to, or would you like us to just get on to the question? You have got 3 questions here, Elias. So, okay, so let's look at his first question. Elias says, who should we be vigilant of that repeatedly frame the way we see futures, and what is the impact to wider society from the standalone social work that you do? And, I think he retyped that. Who should we be vigilant of that repeated frame that the way we see the futures, and what is the impact to the wider society from the standalone workshop that you do? Okay.
Well, just real quickly, this goes to the African about face, is that the future is still colonized by a lot of Western approaches who come in with all this creative sort of stuff. And it's like, that is a stolen idea that is 300, 400, 500 years old. And it's like the amazing sort of artwork that got pulled out of Africa and now sits in London and probably in Lisbon and Italy and so forth. And so now it's not a cultural artifact, it's a mental artifact of what development needs to look like. And so we have this idea of what development works, what it looks like, but it is a linear one-way street that is not sustainable. We know that Americans consume 4.5 Earths, per person. And in Africa, it's like a quarter of an Earth is what the African is consumer. So if we're doing a development trajectory that is based upon those sort of models, it's not going to work. So here's where that imagination that's unlocked has to think of new economic and political systems to do this. So it is we need to be vigilant of pretty much any sort of developmental approach or any overseas development assistance or anything that is coming in to continue to colonize this, to create a future that is unsustainable. So this is where you need to do the 180 and embrace Ubuntu, Ukama. Ukama is the Shona principle of I am. Ubuntu is I am because we are. Ukama is I am because they were. So it has an ancestral reach. I am because they were. And they will be the future generations. They will be because I am. And I am because of the earth and the air and the water and the food that I have. I am of that. So it has this holistic sort of approach that sounds just like Kate Raworth's Donut Economics, but none of it is embedded in these rich African sort of histories.
Thank you for that. And maybe Elena can take the next question. How your ideas could become more widespread, and what someone should expect to deal with when working with communities that are deprived of the capacity to imagine due to the dominant and colonized presence to be.
I will start from the second half of the question, and I think that someone should not expect anything. So not have expectation and be very humble and egoless in a way. I think this word exists, egoless. And to work as much as possible in an intersectional way. By this, I mean to not only think about one problematic, for instance, like race, but to think about race, class, and gender together, because like we can call it systemic, but I always find that the term systemic became really buzzwordy, while the term intersectional, that is way more academic, kept its depth. And I encourage to use this lens when approaching imagination work, but I would say any kind of work. What was how your ideas could become? Well, this is a good question that I don't have an answer for. Yeah, I don't have an answer for it, and I think that there is no recipe for this. Yeah. For my personal practice and work, what I try to do is to navigate different sectors and contexts in order to myself not fall into channeled perspectives, as well as to maybe spread what I do at different scales. Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, coming here and share your work would be a great way to reach out to more people, I guess. Right?
Well,
Yeah. And also like
No,
sorry,
I think of the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you've ever seen it, one of the most bizarre movies out there. And so to me, it's like what makes it contagious and spread is the bizarreness. These really fun sort of communities that are popping up. How you get there, I don't know. It is exactly like this, SeeSee. Planting seeds in this sort of space, someone watches this, someone connects with Elena or I, and it spreads like the weird monster in that movie that Michelle's, fighting and so forth. So I don't know. There's some parallel there somewhere in that sort of space.
yeah. And I also like Ilya's second part of the question is like in terms of expectations. So when I went 2017, I think I was in Sierra Leone. So I went to Sierra Leone with a set of expectations because I come from the city. I come from a place where we have electricity, internet, by default. You don't even have to ask for it. You have it. The minute you get to a hotel, the university, classroom, you have electricity and internet. So my expectation was, okay, everybody should be able to use the internet to do some research when I tell them to. So when I get to Sierra Leone, it's a small town in Tankawali, 3 hours from Freetown. And they were like, there's no electricity. They only run on one generator from the chief's house. And the school run, they operate using daylight. Anytime sunset, nothing goes on, like no electricity. And of course, without electricity, there's no internet. So I was already with PowerPoint slides and stuff, like that's the kind of expectation I have. So I brought with me the privileged world, I don't even know. I was told like, oh, don't expect them to have this, or we might not have electricity. So I printed out everything, for them to do using pen and paper. I thought that was sufficient, but I still have this, like Stephen said, we have this colonized mindset, thinking that all of us subscribe to the same economic system, therefore subscribe to the same clock time of how we function, which they don't. They don't function like 9 to 5. They don't have that. It's a very different world. So that expectation went out the window. So I think that's a great question. I think going to work in different places made me realize that, my set of expectations constantly have to change and adapt, and realizing, how to pull in like intersectional work, like get everybody into that space and watch out for how people can be easily marginalized.
And I think an undercurrent of that is patience with yourself and patience with others, because, I come from an immense place of privilege and so forth. And so where my imaginative mind can go is really unlocked. And then I will be working with someone. So let me just give you an example. I was working with a group that some people had come from Afghanistan. And the question in the setting was, imagine your ideal office, your ideal workspace. So I immediately had an idea of what I looked like, but I was like, let me see what, other. So the Afghanistan crowd starts talking about, imagining light green paint or pink paint, because that's the only type of paint that was available in Kabul. And so their office was constrained by the availability of paint. And that, they wanted windows and some garden, but that was the extent of what they could imagine because of constraints. Well, mine was a Boeing business jet that was my home office that I could fly anywhere I wanted to in the world. And, so something completely outside of their realm of what they were looking at. And so I think we just have to be patient and work with where people are, and know that it can be a slow process. But if you're not really engaging with that repair and that neurobiological, then sometimes I think you'll just continue to get used futures and used imaginations. The cut and paste sort of mentality.
Yeah. And then Elias said another word for patience is be kind to the soul.
Egoless as well. I don't know if it's a word, Elena, or not, but I like it.
Yeah. So we come up to the hour. Elena, would you like to say something to wrap it up, or so that we can let people go?
Thank you for the conversation. It was interesting. I'm gonna go through my day with some new inspiration, and thank you again for the invite.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. You're very generous with your time and sharing your practice. Thank you. Stephen, would you like to wrap up?
No, I love it when people pop in. You find us all. I think I know most of you here in the in the room. Sam, reach out to me. You'll find me. Elena, would love to. I'll have to go dig into your work, and I'm curious what you're doing in Sicily and so forth. So hopefully everyone here just kind of comes away. Just remember this one, like just sit there and do the somatic release in your neck, and you'll come away with maybe a health message from today's conversations.
Excellent. I think that's a great way. And so thank you everybody for coming. The next session that will be in July. This is July. So the next session is in August. We should be having Real Miller. He has not confirmed, but most likely tentatively. And then in September, a few of us, me, Lavonne, and Ivana Milojevic, is running a feminist futures workshop in Bangkok with the APFN conference, one of the session. So if you like to learn more about future studies, do join the APFN conference. Details on LinkedIn, I posted that, and you can register for attendance. I think it's just a donation up to $50. According to the organizer, it's just the amount of money they have to spend to feed you over the 2 days. So they're not making any money. And so do join us. And I've also posted a Substack today about the workshop that we're running, so you can get more information from this. So next up will be Real Miller on imagination. Thank you, guys.
And SeeSee, we're also going to do a workshop on decolonization of foresight as well. So I think at APFN in Bangkok. So
great. I think Stephen, you should write up on LinkedIn and then post it. And
I should.
I can help you repost it, to our members.
Okay. I need to chat with Yost about the specifics, but we're working in that space. So
excellent. So thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone. Bye-bye.
And Stephen, before you go, would you be able to send me some references for your colonized imagination work? I like that bit there. I think I wrote.
I have the more academic side to this, so I'll send you what I have there, because there's some great work from Brazilian and Argentinian scholars as well in this sort of space.
Great. So do send it to me so that when I write up this recap, I can include that selected.
You can include those references. Okay, great.
Yes. Okay, so that's for the benefit of the community. Thank you so much, Stephen, as always.
Thanks. Thanks. And we'll see you in Bangkok, SeeSee.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.